is it an interesting film to watch? Are we, as audience members, really, really intrigued and on the edge of our seat, wondering what's going to happen next? I wasn't, and that's the problem with it.
Let's just quickly talk about the second Winslet film that's nominated. She's got a couple of big hitters out.
Hang on. This is the...
Nothing wrong with Kate's big hitters.
This is The Reader, which is out, came out a couple of weeks ago, which is her and Ray Fiennes, and is, it's set in lots of different years, actually, but the main action is sort of in the 50s in Germany, and it's about a teenage boy who has a relationship with an older woman, which is Kate Winslet. He then goes on to discover that actually in the 40s and the 30s and 40s, she was an SS officer, and the subsequent stuff that happens after that, and it actually goes right into the 1980s, him looking back on his childhood. And actually, this is the Kate Winslet film I much preferred. This is the one that I thought was much more enjoyable and raises some really interesting questions about, can you forgive someone? What if you're totally in love with them and yet you know that they've done some terrible things? What was your reaction to that? Over years, can you forgive someone even though what they did was awful, but now it's 40, 50 years later? Are you allowed to forgive them now? All these kind of questions it raises. That is the movie that I really liked. And that one is the one that I think Kate Winslet will win for, not the other one.
And talking of Kate's big hitters, you see them quite a lot in that film.
It's a very saucy film. It is a very saucy film, isn't it? And Kate's not backwards and coming forwards, is she?
Very, very true.
She's always been one to let her nudity do the talking, and she absolutely does that in The Reader.
We'll talk some more about the big and worthy movies after this. Originally written for the Righteous Brothers by the same team that wrote You Lost That Loving Feeling. The Animals, of course, from 1965, and We Gotta Get Out of This Place.
Good evening. I shall resign the presidency at noon tomorrow.
This is an historic day, the only time a president has ever resigned from office.
Knew about the Watergate.
Committed the greatest felony in American history will never stand trial.
I had an idea for an interview. Richard Nixon.
You're a talk show host.
I spent yesterday watching you interview the Bee Gees. Don't make terrific.
Why would I want to talk to David Frost?
I got $500,000.
Really?
We had Michael Sheen on the show during the Christmas period. Lovely man, and congratulations on his OBE. And of course, just a little bit closer to home, Rufus was in the play when it was on stage at the Donmar Frost Nixon. It's now been made into a big movie, obviously, by Ron Howard. Sadly, Rufus is absent from the movie. Your quick thoughts on that?
Just bitterness, bile, fury and rage, really, Steve.
So you played John Burt, did you, on the stage?
That's right, the BBC's former Director General John Burt, that's right, yeah.
Okay. For those that don't know, quick summary of the film.
Well, this is in the 70s when David Frost he was still doing his sort of chat shows, but he also wanted to do things a little bit more seriously and wanted to get into the world of politics, political interviewing, and he also needed a bit of a leg up in America. His shows in America hadn't worked so well, and he wanted to get the big interview of the time, which would be to get Richard Nixon, the first interview after he's resigning over the Watergate scandal. And it's about the lengths he goes to get that interview, also about what happens when he sits down in the room with the cameras and Richard Nixon, and how they battle it out, really, the battle of wits for Frost to get the story from Richard Nixon, to get Richard Nixon to admit guilt and say sorry to the American public. Really gripping stuff, actually, and I think what Ron Howard has done, he's a very sort of mainstream director. He's made something that you could argue could be a little bit heavy into a very entertaining story. I mean, Peter Morgan wrote it as well, so we can give him some snaps too for doing that. But it's not just politics, Watergate. It is a story about showbiz, really, about these two showbiz figures, and brilliantly done. And Frank Langella's getting a lot of the nominations. We're talking about the Golden Globes. They're on tonight. He's got a nomination. But a bit like The Queen, when that came out a few years ago, and it was all about Helen Mirren, people tend to forget about Michael Sheen. He was brilliant as Tony Blair. He was brilliant as David Frost in this. And, we should just give him a little pat on the back and say, even though you might not be walking home with the gongs, you're brilliant in this as well.
A little round of applause for Sheeny.
Yeah.
Did you enjoy the film? I thought it was very compelling. I thought it was hugely entertaining, and it had a kind of nice. I mean, it was for most of the film. Of course, I was just regretful of the fact that Rufus wasn't in it.
That's the one thing wrong with it.
I was actually. Do you know what? I was watching it on TV in the special preview copy. I was gobbing on the screen.
Yeah.
Every time the character of John Burt came on, because it was a Rufus. But aside from that, I thought the film was very well made.
It's Matthew McFadden, isn't it? I can't even say his name without a sneer.
He doesn't even do the voice.
No. People who've got the letter M for their first name, letter M for their second.
Yeah. Eminem.
Don't get me started on Eminem or Michael Moore.
Yeah.
Oof. And a quick mention as well, of course, of one that's likely to clean up in a lot of these award ceremonies, Slumdog Millionaire.
Yeah, this is another one. Frost Nixon and Revolutionary Road and The Reader, which we've all mentioned, and Slumdog Millionaire, they're all in the Best Picture Drama category. And this is a British film. Danny Boyle made it, set in India. It came out on Friday, actually, so you might have seen it already, about a kid, the slumdog of the title, who rises from poverty to go onto the TV show Who Wants to Be a Millionaire, and is doing very well on it. But the authorities are saying, well, hang on a second, you're just this kind of orphan from the slums. How would you know the answers to all these questions? How would you possibly get all these questions right to be nearly a millionaire? And so it's him in the seat, in the famous seat in the studio, looking back on how actually he did get to know the answers to all these questions. Brilliant film. I think it's such an original film as well. You know, it's a real sort of fresh start to 2009. Just really good to see something that is sort of romantic comedy, is sort of drama, is sort of sociological, but actually ultimately it's just a really, really entertaining movie.
I think it's very elegantly made by Danny Boyle. It's very snappy, and you know, he's got tremendous sort of visual flair.
Yeah.
It started off, and I thought for a while maybe it was a true story. For some reason, I thought I'd heard about a young kid who had gone on Who Wants to Be a Millionaire and made some money, and then as time goes on, I think it becomes very, very melodramatic, and I think it's trying to make a sort of a nod, if you like, to the Bollywood films, which are often very melodramatic. But for me, it started to get a bit too kind of crazy and hysterical towards the end.
Well, I mean, a lot of it is about fate, really, and the guy's answer, the young kid, the slumdog of the title, says, well, I know the answers because of fate. And actually, if you're wanting to see something that is gritty realism, that sort of magic side to it might be a little bit hard to swallow. But yeah, there is that magical, fantastical side to it, which actually is why I really liked it, because I think it's very deftly handled.
Thank you very much indeed. We shall talk briefly about some of the comedies, because obviously the Golden Globes is quite unique in that it has a kind of comedy musical section.
Mamma Mia's up for musical comedy. Steve, and one of your favourites?
We'll come back to that after we've heard this trail.
New comedy, Thursday night from 8.
Let's have a musical choice from Tiny Dan before we go back to films.
Well, indeed. Actually, we've got Jing here. For reasons I can't really go into right now, my girlfriend got hold of some of Barry Norman's pickled onions.
Yeah. I've heard all about these.
Well,
Rufus
indeed.
has been giving me the details. Apparently, it's sort of everyone knows that Barry Norman makes great pickled onions. I didn't know.
I'm just wondering what's next for the brand James King.
I think some James King chutney would be very, very nice.
Anyway, my musical choice, Steve, this week is Broadcast, and regular Steve fans will know that I often theme these choices around the weather of the time. It's been very cold this week. It's been absolutely brass monkeys, and I think back in the summer I may have played a little bit of reggae. So this is continuing that long, proud tradition of
Absolutely.
It's a lovely glacial, icy but very beautiful song called Winter Now.
Dan's musical choice on this week's Steve show. Remind us again, please, what it was.
Broadcast and Winter Now.
Thank you very, very, very much indeed.
Your summer in Barcelona.
I am Juan Antonio, and you are?
Christina, and this is my friend Vicky.
I'd like to invite you both to spend the weekend. Really well, we'll drink good wine, we'll make love.
Who exactly is going to make love?
Hopefully the three of us.
Now, I, of course, am a ginormous Woody Allen fan.
Yep.
And I, like a lot of Woody's legions of fans, a little bit disappointed in some of his recent efforts. We're talking Golden Globes, we're talking movies with James King, and Vicky Cristina Barcelona is Woody Allen. Some are saying a return to form.
Well, I mean, I think it's a return to form in that it's watchable, whereas films that haven't been either of those things. I remember when I got into Woody Allen, I was watching things sort of late 80s, early 90s, stuff like Hannah and Her Sisters and Crimes and Misdemeanors, which even when I watch them today, do seem to have a real sort of impact to them. They have a real depth and weight to them, quite tragic movies in some respects. And now, even though I think Vicky Cristina Barcelona is a very entertaining film, it doesn't have anything like that kind of punch to it. I did really enjoy it. It's about two American girls who go on holiday in Spain and the hijinks that they get up to, and it's a very summery, frothy, fun film to watch. But he certainly has moved away, it seems, from those big sort of, real impactful films, that leave you feeling like you've been punched in the stomach.
Well, I have to say, I was tremendously pleased by it. I thought what it had, which is something that Woody hasn't had for a long time, is a real kind of zip to it. the editing was much pacier. Often he relies on very long, slow takes. Even though he was doing that here, everything just seemed a lot more lively. It looks great, and the performances I thought were tremendous, particularly Penelope Cruz, who is hysterical, and she gets to speak in Spanish, which I think seems to help her performance.
Absolutely, yeah. So it's Penelope Cruz, Rebecca Hall, who's a brilliant English actress who's also in Frost Nixon as well, actually, although Rufus isn't. And who else is in it? Scarlett Johansson. I'm expecting in the papers tomorrow a picture of Scarlett Johansson with a low-cut top with a joke about Golden Globes.
Sure.
You know, it normally happens this time of the year, so we're looking forward to that tomorrow. And yeah, great performances. And it is him. It's a bit of a cliche to say, oh, Woody Allen, I much prefer his funnier films, but he's sort of being funny again, as opposed to some of his recent movies, some of the ones he made in Britain, where he's trying to make these really serious dramas, like crime dramas, and they just haven't worked at all. Now he's on form again.
A lot of women find Woody himself, as he gets older, a bit creepy.
Yeah.
I imagine that Sam is one of them.
Yeah.
Undoubtedly.
Well, I mean, the stuff that Woody's got up to in his past and in his family life hasn't helped him much, to be fair to him, has it? But, you know, I mean, maybe we'll get lots of texts from women saying Woody is A, sexy, and B, I love his movies, but I do find that he's quite a man's filmmaker, mainly because in his early films, where, you know, when he's in them, he is this uber geek, but pulling incredibly hot women, and you can understand why blokes like us are going to like that.
Nothing wrong with an uber geek. He's instantly not in this film, so if you are a little bit turned off by Woody...
Javier Bardem is the eye candy for the ladies in this one.
Absolutely. And before we move away from the Golden Globes and look at some of the big blockbusters of the summer, what about some of the other musical comedy nominees?
Yeah, okay, so Vicky Cristina Barcelona is one of them in the musical comedy category. You also got Burn After Reading, which is the Coen Brothers movie, Mike Leigh with Happy Go Lucky. Yeah, I know, what's going on there? One of the most irritating films I've ever seen. In Bruges is in there, and Mamma Mia. Biggest film of all time.
Now then, I have not seen Mamma Mia because I am neither a woman or gay, but I know you have. What's your take on it?
I got sent a copy, and my wife... I'll pause for shock value there.
Yeah.
Said to me, she said to me, "Oh, you got a copy, brilliant. Who do you want to send it to? Who do you want to give it to as a present?" I'm like, "Well, I'm keeping it."
Sure.
What do you mean? Why would I want to give it to anybody?
Sure.
I love it.
Sure. Yeah.
So I can, of course, you know, I know that it is rubbish. It is actually rubbish. But I think it's just whether you kind of go with that or you don't, and I did.
A lot of people are saying that you start off and you hate it for about 30 minutes, and then somehow it gets under your skin, and by the end you just can't help but sing along. Sammy's shaking her head.
I hated it for 30 minutes, probably 45. Cried like I've never cried before at a film for about 10 minutes, and then went back to hating it.
That's extreme reactions, that you can go from such passionate loathing to such passionate, I don't know, you know.
But this is something that I'm hearing a lot, which is extraordinary.
I was moved, but I didn't make me like the film.
I know you, Steve. I know you, and you'll hate it. So don't bother watching it, because you're a man with not much time on your hands. You don't want to waste your time.
Please, I'm a man's man. I'm the Russell Crowe of Six Music. I'll tell you a man who is in touch with his camp and gay side is Rufus.
That's the introduction I was after, Steve. Thank you. I think you'd be interested in it, Steve, because as an actor, it's quite interesting watching the film, because it's all about a bunch of actors who don't usually do work like this, doing work like this because they think they're good at it, or they're going to be good at it. So you can just imagine a lot of phones going down after speaking to agents. Well, my agent's got a musical offer, and you know, when I sing at Christmas, you say I've got a lovely voice, don't you, darling? And I think maybe I could, you know, go a step out of my comfort zone. And you just want to go, no, leave musicals to the musical actors and carry on playing, you know, whatever you do. But it's really difficult to watch sometimes.
But that's why a lot of people love it, is because they're seeing people who aren't very good at singing or dancing, and they're going, oh, well, I'm much more in touch with this than I am if it's someone who is fantastically brilliant at dancing and singing.
Yeah.
Imagine, Harry, that you probably you'll never see it.
You got the soundtrack.
What would actually drag you to the cinema to see that?
I don't know, the threat of, you know, maybe a public stoning if I don't go to see it. I can't even understand why people would see it. You know, but that's not saying they're wrong. It's saying that I'm right, but it's not necessarily saying that they're wrong.
You are quite an angry man by nature, and I think it